failed soldier, living off handouts, dragging this poor kid around like a pathetic pity project. Tell them a vagrant ex-military trespasser is harassing executive staff in our lobby.
You complete idiot! This is not a beggar. She owns 80% of our company. Welcome back, Commander.
Family doesn't tear each other down, they lift each other up. Escort her out and freeze her accounts.
Failed soldier, look at you. You're completely broke, living off handouts, dragging this poor kid around like a pathetic pity project. My sister's voice echoed off the polished Italian marble of the high-rise corporate lobby. Her manicured hand lashed out, snatched the $5 million cashier's check right out of my hand and violently ripped it in half. Then again, and again. She threw the white paper confetti right into my face. My 7-year-old son squeezed my hand, tears pouring down his cheeks as he hid behind my legs. 2 towering corporate security guards flanked the exit, their arms crossed, blocking our only way out. "Call the police now," my sister sneered into her radio, laughing hysterically. "Tell them a vagrant ex-military trespasser is harassing executive staff and making up absurd financial claims." Everyone in that bustling glass tower turned to stare. The whispers spread like wildfire. The mockery in my sister's eyes was absolute. She had no idea what was coming. That was her first mistake. But to understand how a decorated combat veteran ended up trapped in a corporate lobby, mocked by her own flesh and blood, we have to go back to 3 months earlier. When I returned from my final deployment after 8 years of service in specialized tactical logistics, I came home to a shattered life. My husband had passed away during my deployment, leaving me to raise our young son alone. I didn't come back looking for glory. I just wanted peace, stability, and to build a quiet life. Because I wore faded denim jackets, kept my hair short, and drove a 10-year-old beat-up pickup truck, the world made its assumptions. And nobody made more assumptions than my older sister. She was the newly appointed vice president of operations at Vanguard Capital, a massive private equity firm dominating the regional market. To her, success was defined by designer shoes, corner offices, and stepping on anyone below her to reach the top. From the moment I returned, she made sure I felt like nothing. "It's so sad," she would say at family dinners, taking loud sips of expensive wine while eyeing my simple clothes. "You spent all those years in the military just to end up with no real-world skills. You're practically useless in the corporate world. But don't worry, if you ever need a little food money, I can lend you $20. I never argued, I never raised my voice. My military training had taught me one fundamental truth: the loudest person in the room is usually the weakest. True strength doesn't scream, it plans. So when she made condescending remarks about my lack of an executive career, I simply nodded, took another sip of my water, and remained entirely calm. My silence only emboldened her. She mistook my composure for submission. Remember that detail, it matters later. Over the next 2 months, the emotional abuse escalated. My sister loved an audience. At our mother's birthday dinner in a high-end downtown restaurant, she loudly offered to pay for my son's clothes because his mother clearly couldn't afford proper attire. When I brought my son to her office building one afternoon just to hand over our mother's medical records, she refused to let me pass the turnstiles, telling the front desk staff in front of 20 employees, "My sister is a bit mentally unhinged from her war days. Keep her out." I watched her gaslight our family, claim sole financial responsibility for our parents, and treat everyone beneath her tax bracket like disposable dirt. She lived in absolute confidence that she was untouchable, wrapped in the protective armor of her executive title and 6-figure salary. She believed she was the ultimate power in the room. What she didn't know was that while she was climbing the corporate ladder by tearing others down, I had spent my final 3 years in the service managing high-value defense procurement contracts and strategic asset restructurings worth hundreds of millions. When I retired, the Department of Defense hadn't just handed me a discharge paper. A private global logistics conglomerate had brought me on as a silent partner and chief operations auditor to quietly restructure their recent multi-billion-dollar acquisitions. One of those acquisitions was Vanguard Capital. I owned the majority stake in the parent company holding her firm's debt. I held the keys to the entire building, but I had kept my name entirely off the public website during the transition phase, preferring to operate in total anonymity until the final audit was complete. Nobody in that company knew my face, and my sister certainly had no clue that the failed soldier she mocked held her entire professional existence in the palm of her hand. The breaking point arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. I walked into Vanguard Capital's main headquarters holding two things: my son's hand and a physical $5 million cashier's check, a liquid disbursement from my personal asset portfolio intended to fund a local veterans housing initiative I was launching that afternoon. I intended to process the transfer quietly at the private banking suite on the top floor. Instead, I ran directly into my sister in the lobby. She was surrounded by junior executives and corporate clients. Seeing me in my simple boots and tactical coat, her eyes flashed with pure disdain. She saw an opportunity to put on a show. "What are you doing here?" she demanded loudly, stepping into my path. "I told security we don't allow beggars in the lobby." "I'm here on private business," I said softly, keeping my voice utterly level. "Step aside." She burst out laughing, looking around at her colleagues. "Private business? You don't have two quarters to rub together. Show me what business you could possibly have here." I held up the certified cashier's check, intending to show her the bank seal so she would simply move out of the way. That was when she made her catastrophic mistake. Instead of reading the numbers, she snatched the document straight out of my hand. She didn't even look at the 6 zeros. Driven by pure spite and the desperate need to humiliate me in front of her peers, she sneered, "Failed soldier, you're broke," and ripped the $5 million check apart. Piece by piece, she shredded $5 million of certified funds into tiny bits and tossed them into the air like worthless trash. My son began to cry. The lobby fell dead silent. My sister turned to the security guards. "Block the exits, call the police. She's trying to utter forged documents and trespass on private property." The guards closed in. The lobby crowd gathered, watching what they thought was the final, pathetic downfall of a struggling mother. My sister stood there, hands on her hips, her face twisted in a smug, triumphant grin. She thought she had won. She thought she had broken me. The tension in the room hit a boiling point. The guards grabbed my arms. My son wept. And that's when the executive elevator doors hummed open. Out stepped the chairman and CEO of Vanguard Capital, a man known across the corporate world as an iron-fisted billionaire who never took off his jacket for anyone. My sister's face lit up. She turned toward him immediately, eager to take credit for handling the security risk. "Mr. Chairman," she called out, her voice dripping with artificial panic. "Don't worry, I've handled the intruder. This woman tried to present a fake $5 million check, but security has her locked down." The chairman stopped in his tracks. His eyes swept across the lobby, landing on the torn shreds of paper scattered across the marble floor, then moving up to the security guards holding my arms, and finally meeting my calm, unbothered gaze. In a fraction of a second, all the color drained from his face. He turned completely ashen. He didn't look at my sister, he didn't look at the guards. He sprinted across the lobby, pushing past the stunned crowd, his expensive leather shoes sliding across the polished floor. My sister smiled, expecting him to deliver the final blow to me himself. Instead, the chairman threw the security guards out of his way, stopped directly in front of me, dropped his head, bowed deeply at a perfect 90-degree angle, and said exactly 2 words. "Welcome, Commander." The entire lobby went instantly, suffocatingly silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the marble. Pens dropped from executives' hands. The security guards froze mid-step, their faces going completely pale. My sister's mouth dropped open, her smug expression melted into absolute paralyzed horror. "Seat, Chairman," she stammered, her voice trembling violently. "What are you doing? She's just my sister, she's broke." The chairman stood up straight, his face flushed with pure fury as he turned to her. "You complete idiot," the chairman spat, his voice trembling with rage. "This is not a beggar. This is the majority owner of Vanguard Capital. She owns 80% of our parent holding company. She signed off on your employment contract 2 weeks ago, and she came here today to finalize the capital injection for our entire regional division." The silence in the room was absolute. My sister's knees literally buckled. She reached out to grab a pillar to stay upright, staring at me as if she were looking at a ghost. I didn't smile, I didn't shout, I didn't gloat. I simply reached into my inner jacket pocket, pulled out a small black leather notebook and opened it. "Audit completed. I said calmly, looking directly into my sister's wide, terrified eyes. Chairman, effective immediately, terminate this vice president's contract for gross misconduct, abuse of authority, and intentional destruction of corporate financial assets. Furthermore, freeze all her corporate accounts pending a full forensic audit of her department. Right away, Commander, the chairman replied without a second's hesitation. He motioned to the guards. Escort her out of the building immediately, strip her of her badge. The exact security guards she had summoned to arrest me stepped forward, seized her by the arms, and pulled her toward the glass doors. Wait, please, my sister sobbed, her arrogance completely shattered as tears ruined her expensive makeup. Sister, please, I didn't know I'm family. I picked up my weeping son, wiped the tears from his cheeks, and looked at him with a soft smile. Then I turned back to my sister, watching her get marched out into the rain, completely stripped of her career, her status, and her dignity. Family doesn't tear each other down, I said quietly. They lift each other up. The cascade of her downfall was swift and merciless. Over the next 3 weeks, the forensic audit I ordered revealed multiple compliance violations in her division that she had swept under the rug to boost her quarterly bonuses. Vanguard Capital launched a full legal suit against her to recover the damages. Stripped of her income, blacklisted from the financial industry, and facing massive legal fees, she was forced to sell her high-end apartment and luxury cars just to stay out of court. Our family finally saw the truth. The narrative she had spun about being the savior of the family crumbled overnight, leaving her completely isolated. As for me, I reprinted the $5 million check that afternoon. The Veterans Housing Project opened its doors 3 months later, providing homes for dozens of former service members and their families. I still drive my old pickup truck. I still wear my comfortable faded jackets. But now, whenever someone tries to look down on me because of how I look, I just offer a calm, quiet smile. Because the strongest people in the room never need to prove who they are. They just let their results do the talking. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who had no idea who they were dealing with? Tell me your story in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe and turn on notifications for more revenge.